The Passionate Leader, because leadership without passion is just a title.
Meeting. We got a collapse in the garage. Get the squad back equipment in here. We got an I-beam gone to a firefighter.
Get that out, urgent, transmit a second along.
This is where titles end and leadership begins. Ask yourself, what would you do if your leadership was questioned before you even opened your mouth? What would you do if you were the only one in the room who looked like you? Would you shrink? Would you soften? Or would you sharpen? Deena Johnson Lee chose to sharpen. From an EMT working in the emergency room to the first female fire chief in the South Bay region of Los Angeles County, she did not wait for permission. At the time of her appointment, she was the only female fire chief across Los Angeles, Orange, and Ventura counties. She started in a small municipal department near LAX after a single ride-along changed her life. Captain in 2007, battalion chief in 2019, and fire chief in 2020. Chief officer, urban search and rescue, strike team leader, wildland, California State Fire Marshal instructor, and 20 years of shaping recruits at a college fire academy. She has a bachelor's degree in fire science and fire chief officer designation, but titles are not the point. The impact is. She is a founding member of the Women's Fire Alliance, mentoring and supporting more than 100 women in the fire service. She brought the first fired up girls empowerment camp to her department so girls ages 12 to 9 could see what is possible before someone tells them that it is not. She has faced the challenge of having her leadership questioned because she is a woman, and instead of letting that define her, she let it refine her. Her belief is simple and powerful. Leadership starts with leading yourself. Now retired, she continues to coach, mentor, and speak, giving women and men the information she wishes she had while climbing the ranks. She is relentless about recruitment, retention, and making sure the next generation does not fight the same battles alone. And when the job gets heavy, she advocates for real strength, calling in counseling and first responder wellness resources instead of pretending toughness means silence. Ask yourself one more thing. Are you building a fire service where the next generation can rise? Because if you're not ready after today's conversation, you likely never will be. Welcome to The Passionate Leader, Deena Johnson Lee. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is absolutely our honor. There's a lot to unpack with that, obviously. So I guess where I like to really start first with most everybody is kind of walk us through, we started in the ER side of the world. What was really the catalyst that you were like, you know what, man, this first responder world might be where I want to kind of aim myself career-wise?
Yeah, so I was a waitress, and I was a single mom. I had 2 kids, young kids. I took an EMT class just to learn CPR. Like I thought, I have a couple little kids, I better know what to do.
Sure.
And I took the EMT at like a regional occupational program, and I loved it. I got 100% on all my tests, and I just fell in love with it. And at the time, I think I had a suspended driver's license, so I couldn't get a job as an ambulance operator, but I went to work in the emergency room. And from there, I started taking all my prerequisites to be a nurse. Like I worked with a lot of registered nurses. And while I was doing that, the firefighters, the paramedics, from the local department would come in, and they saw like how strong I was moving patients around. And back in those days, we would do CPR compressions for like an hour, or, like sweating and the whole thing, and so they said, you should try a ride along. And it never had occurred to me. And that one ride along started it. I just fell in love with the camaraderie. I fell in love with the physical aspect. I fell in love with, every call was different. And when we would bring patients into the ER, one of the women doctors there, she said, Deena, you are glowing. And I was like, yeah. So I switched my major to fire science. I did everything to get ready to get hired. And it took me just under 3 years to get a job with a full-time department. I did go work for a volunteer fire department
Mm,
before I got hired full time. But one story that I always like to tell is that, in the beginning, I was a little, I think, delusional, or I didn't know what to expect out of the fire service, right? I believe in myself, and, I'm like, I'm just going to do everything I can to be the best firefighter I can. And in my Fire 101 class, there are like 30 kids in there. And the instructor said, out of 30 of you, only like 10 of you are going to go on to get hired full time by a full time department, but one of you
mm.
in here is going to become a fire chief. And I said to myself, that's going to be me. And so that I just wanted to let you know that, because that was like, I don't know the exact brain hack that does, but like that was in the back of my mind the whole
Mm.
time, right? Like that, like, so that when you encounter opportunities to promote, or to, like, that was like the plan, that I would ultimately do that, along the way. But I love telling that story.
You actually you took my one of my next questions, because one of the things I've seen is there are different groups of firefighters out there. There's ones that are like, you know what, I want to lead, I want to make a difference, and some are just they're just happy to ride the big fire truck and go help people during their worst days of their life. So that was one of the questions was, pushed you into wanting to be a leader. And I think obviously now we know. Now, served on the same department your entire career, or did you serve on a couple of different departments?
So I started as a volunteer, and I worked there for a couple of years. The firefighters weren't paid, and the captains were paid. And I also worked as an apprentice at another fire department before I got hired.
Mhm.
Yeah, with my municipal department. That was with the same department, that department near LAX for 20 years.
That so that there's a pretty good. So one of the things that I have been background for me is I have been on my department since 2007. I've served on different volunteer departments, but I've only been career with my current department. And one of the struggles that I found was everybody, as they work their way up, they're like, we need to make this, a department, my department, or our department type thing. So how did you kind of go about, you realized, this is my department, I've been on this, but you need to improve and honor tradition without making it feel like, when you got promoted to the chief, that you were like, okay, so this is it, this is now Deena's way, and every way we've done it before, like, this was horrible and stuff. Like, did you ever have that, internal or even, external administrative, battle with the rest of the members?
You mean like the culture of the department, or like
Yeah,
like
so like one of the conundrums that I had put in for, I know we'd said, in the when we were getting loaded up, that I put in for the fire chief's job, and thankfully I can tell you right now, I'm very happy to be a deputy. I believe bureaucracy is definitely not well suited for my lack of verbal filter, I guess, is probably the way to put it. But there, as I'm going through the process, I'm like, if I was the chief, I would do this. And I ran the internal struggle of, if I make too much change, it's going to appear as though I'm trying to erase our tradition. So cultural tradition,
yeah,
we've done it this way. And, for me, I was like, we did cheat, we got to change the color of the fire, not the color, but, either the paint scheme or some certain small nuances, because it signifies, a change in regime. It doesn't mean that I felt that the previous administration was horrible. It's just there's a clear line between when the previous chief was here and then when the new chief comes in. So did you run into that? Was there any pushback as far as that with internal, no, internal to yourself and internal within the organization?
yeah. A couple things, like, so I like that you want to be the number two, or like I would be happy to be the number two.
Sure,
That's a
sure.
really good spot. I mean, that's the big difference is that the number one is like all the weight of the responsibility, like,
Yeah,
and not like the fun stuff. Um, but I do think that I like always got that's why I love your podcast. I love what you talk about on
I
your
appreciate
TikTok
that. Thank you.
because I like the firefighters that hold a standard and the ones that are below the standard, like there's
Mm,
always this, right? Like so
yes.
I was thinking about a time when I was a captain and my partner captain and like everybody was just in the brown chairs, right? And I said, God, you guys are just a bunch of blobs. And I and the one of the firefighters was like, "Oh, they were so mad at you for saying that." And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, so from go, I like when I started the department, like in the engineers compartment, they had like tools in coffee cans. Like
Mm,
literally, there weren't even like, you know what I mean? Like I like immediately when I got there, and I would say that maybe, you know, I just take initiative, but maybe some you know, senior guys take it the wrong way. That I'm just trying to improve throughout, you know, my entire career, right? So when I
mm,
promoted to chief, it was more of the same, but you know, I had three expectations of the fire department. I said, be professional, be ready, and take care of each other. You know, and everything, you know, I falls under that, right? Like so, those are the and so you know, be professional, like in wearing your uniform during business hours, or you know, I know everybody rags on the chiefs about oh they care more about uniforms and you know blah blah
sure.
blah. Well, it is it is something I care about because it's professionalism, right?
Yeah, of
And the
course. Yeah.
public needs to see us as professionals as knowing what to do when we show up. So that's part of it. And being ready is being trained up. It's having your pre-trip done on your rig, you know, it's all the things. And then taking care of each other is, you know, just all of those things, how we treat one another, you know, creating an environment that's psychologically safe for people to make
Mm.
mistakes, to grow, you know, and to, you know, I didn't think it was too much to ask, but I guess it was.
It can be, you know, and do you feel that some of it, we're going to be very, you know, again, we talked about it pre show. This is unfortunately right now. I think it's still a male dominated role in society, and it's there's a lot of misogynistic firefighters out there. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. There really is, and if there's any doubt about it, that some firefighters believe that they're, for lack of a better phrase, their shit don't stink, just look at some other pages where they are crapping on whether somebody is a career or a volunteer firefighter. And you would be remiss to believe that those same individuals probably don't believe that a female firefighter or a male firefighter are superior or inferior to the other. And I challenge everybody to understand that the citizens of our communities really do not care. They don't care what color truck we have, what color skin we have, what credentials we have on our backs. And we're getting to we better, you know, I feel we're in a point that they don't even care what gender we are. They just want to know that when they call because their husband, their wife, their whatever is laying motionless on the bathroom floor, that we're going to go up there and we're going to make it better, and we're going to be able to make, you know, reverse whatever happened and return their life back to the situation to which it was before the emergency happened. They do not care who does that. They just want somebody to be able to do that for them. Um, However, we can be very real with ourselves. This still is, you know, there's still some problems out there. So, um, do you feel that, you know, some of the resistance you felt from that was not because of anything more than just guys being like, oh, you know, now we got to listen to Deena instead of it, you know, being Bob, or, you know, insert name here. And if I happen to name somebody who has a direct tie to your agency, it's completely, I'm just trying to throw fictitious names out there. But, you know, so I guess, you know, one of the questions I'll ask is, you know, What did you run into for the females that are listening and people who need to understand the fire service needs to be better? Being a female in the fire service, how did you find the strength and the perseverance to push through all of the roadblocks that you may or may not have had as far as getting through the stigma of, male versus female and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think sometimes that it was just like pure grit and just
Mm,
toughness, determination, like just driven, and not really a lot of strategy. I would say my strategy was to just become the most competent firefighter that I could be, right? Like I have
yeah.
hundreds of certifications. I worked at the fire academy, so I got so good that like you can't attack
Hmm.
me technically. So then they start going for your character, or
Hmm.
sometimes things were just even made up and I thought, wow, they actually made something up, or it's like they don't tell you like you're making a mistake. I'm sure you talk about this too. Like, don't gossip about the person. Go tell them what they're, so
Yes.
they can fix it. Like, easy enough. But that pecking order is real. In the
Hmm.
station, even at the fire academy. And I used to fight. I used to peck back. And I really
Yeah.
took on a lot of masculine traits and tried to be like the tougher, bigger man than everyone. But it really wasn't working.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
like I didn't learn till later um, how to have more internal authority and a better internal self
Hmm.
concept so that I could stop trying to prove myself and just have that inner knowing, right? Like that, y'all don't even know the answers to these questions. And,
Right.
and you're criticizing me, so, it took me a long time to not be afraid to be disliked, and
Hmm.
then it's kind of like a light bulb went off one day where I realized if I turn right, I'm wrong. If I turn left, I'm wrong. So I'm just going to do what I think is best based on my training, education, and experience. And that's what we're going with, So
Yeah.
it took a long time. And, you know how it is. You want to belong. I wanted to belong. I
Hmm.
wanted to be one of the guys, but that didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
For this is what I want to say to the women out there. I don't like giving advice. That's one thing I do that's annoying. Like people don't like advice. It's very
Sure.
condescending. But if I could talk to myself, I would say you're stronger than you think you are.
Mm.
Your courage is really your superpower. Keep showing up, keep stepping up. Your authentic self is the best thing you have to offer, and you can be any position in the fire department that you want to, including fire chief. That's what I would say to the women listening right now.
I Your authentic power comment was that's prophetic. That's amazing. So let's kind of hit on one of the questions that was given to me. As the first female fire chief in the region, what barriers were most obvious, and which were more subtle or systemic, if that, stuff like that.
So, one thing that was very disturbing, upsetting to me was that I was the most qualified person on our department. The chief prior to me had a heart attack, and then so he was out. And then basically, the other battalion chiefs were like, "Oh, you have to do it, Deena. You're the most qualified, right?" So I went into it thinking that I could make changes that I could. And but then from the city council, the city manager, like that, it was really like I was being treated like a token, like that I was just maybe like a hood ornament, like a
Mm,
DEI award, instead of like
Yeah.
someone that knows this fire department, knows this city, that you should listen to about, how we move as the fire department. And so that was a bummer. And then as far as like, this is another thing about being a chief, is like, it's a whole nother world. Like in the fire department, you always working for someone that has held a nozzle in their hand or has done the job. And then when you go to
Hmm.
work for a civilian, it's like, this is like a whole different world, and different politics, and it was just a whole different world. And with the other chiefs, there's like 29 different fire departments in LA County, and I would go to the meetings, and I was the only woman in there with all
Mm.
of those chiefs. And
Yeah.
and these are my peers now, and I would ask advice like, how did you learn how to speak to city council meetings? Did you go to Toastmasters? Did you do, whatever? And there was so much gatekeeping that not one chief wanted to like
Yeah.
help me. So that just continued like that. Like my entire career, I felt like I was flopping around like a fish, and where
Yep.
I really, didn't have mentors or female mentors until very late in my career, which is the reason why I'm
Hmm.
so passionate about mentoring
Yeah.
women now, and giving the information, because the information was nowhere to be found.
In it, I think that's kind of where I love how our paths have crossed, because they're very similar. We are going, the Passionate Leader platform is now moving down the concept of starting conferences, because while there are a lot of conferences, they're either extremely expensive for like I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but to our listeners, understand that we get it, that the ones that really need to hear it's, how many times have we all been to a class and it's like, man, the guy that really needs to hear what this speaker just said isn't even in the room. It's likely always going to be the case, but to the conference concept, we look at it from a viewpoint of, all these conferences that are invaluable are so expensive for smaller communities to send people to. So the ones that really need to hear these messages just aren't out to get it. So that's why, like, we've done the same thing. So I love that you're seeing this absolute chasm, a huge Grand Canyon sized void in the fire service. And I see it firsthand over here. I have the utmost respect for our chief. Her and I have essentially worked our way through the ranks. We're about the same age. And I see people talk at her, not talk to her. And they try to, I'm going to use a horrible phrase, but they try to mansplain things to her. And it's frustrating, because I'm like, she knows what you're trying, she gets it. And your message, I'm sending this to her once this goes live and stuff, because I want her to understand the message that you gave earlier, because I see her value. I would need her to see her value. And I think that
Mhm.
sometimes, again, it blows down to the people talking down to others. And it is extremely prevalent in the in the gender gap, but it's even in the fire service in general. You'll see two males do the same thing. And it's just like, we spend so much time in such a beautiful service that really is the best job in the whole world, just talking down or at each other. And it's like, man, how about we work together to understand? Because there are people that I don't typically care to work with, but when it comes down to it, as long as we're pulling the rope in the same direction, we're going to have damn good progress, in the fire service. Like, if we were to be able to get and put all, what, 10,000 fire departments together, all pulling in the same direction, where we didn't care about our egos, and we didn't care whether it was a male, a woman, a freaking a SEAL. I really don't care. Like, whoever is the person in charge. It's unfortunate, and it really actually frustrates me to hear that, and gatekeeping is a really good phrase, because that's what it is. And I'm going to take a wild guess at it, that it probably was some individuals who are like, man, if we really let her in and she starts to show us up, how's that going to make us look like, where are these guys who are paid, 6-7 figures a year, but she's she's doing it, and it's all gatekeeping, and it's horrible. I love what you're doing now. The void that you're trying to fill, is that what you are? Let's transition a little bit away from the career for a little bit. The Women's Fire Alliance, is that how you're trying to help backfill this void, or is that two totally different things?
So it's totally different things, but I'm wearing my WFA shirt here that I'm supporting, because what the Women's Fire Alliance does, even though I'm not a part of it anymore, is they have mentor groups for women. It's basically, and like you were mentioning too, that there's, for us passionate leaders out there, if we have community, then we don't feel so alone. And then, it's support that we need, because it gets lonely when you're that person at the job, right? So it's a community of women. And then what I'm doing on TikTok, I'm also writing a book right now, that's going to be a field guide for women, because like a lot of these times, like, and I can tell you tons of stories about, when guys were shitty to me, but I didn't have the language, the education, the understanding of, gender bias, or even what was happening, right? I just knew it didn't feel good in my body. And, and now, like, I want to give women the tools that, like you're saying with your chief, that what's a better response? I say, never complain, never explain. If you find yourself doing either one of those, just stop, right? And we all make mistakes. And I have made a bazillion mistakes. I'm not coming on to say like I'm the best chief that ever was, not even, but I want women to learn from my mistakes and give them, the right tools, so that they can have a better time in their career.
That's such a cool experience. That is going to be something that I think every firehouse needs to have on its shelves when it's done, because again, it's going to become more and more predominant. And I think one of the coolest things, my wife's upstairs, but she tells a story of during one of our open house, events, community events, where a little girl walked up and she's like, "There's a girl in the fire station." And it's the excitement. And it's like, of course there is. Like, so if we can do this one by one, and we'll break this down in the stigma block by block, and we will make a difference. And I gotta say, one of the things that we talked, in the lead up about the recruitment and retention, and I think that's definitely in and of itself. And so we're going to kind of get to the bouncing back and forth with questions and stuff. So bear with me while I try to collect my thoughts, because there's so much that just goes on in my little itty bitty baby brain. So one of the things that excites me the most, I am part of the state of New Hampshire has a week-long program that is a junior firefighter program. And I got into the fire service as a junior firefighter. So I forever will be indebted to programs of whether it's called a junior firefighter, a cadet program, fire explorers, if it's through the Boy Scouts of America. To me, the overall structure doesn't matter, but the concept of getting young minds and bodies excited about the fire service is something that I will forever be indebted to for my career. Until the day that they put me in the ground, I'm forever indebted to that. So I loved to hear about the Fired Up program. So if you let's unpack that one, because I think that's super exciting to kind of learn about. So was it something that you spearheaded and launched, or was the Fired Up program something that already existed in the area?
So it already existed. There were some camps from Los Angeles Fire Department, or the bigger fire departments, and it wasn't as. There's a lot of logistics that go into it, like any event that you put on. It's a weekend event, but I was really proud to be able to have girls 12 to 19 in the community that I worked in. to come and learn the tools to feel empowered, like even just hammering nails that they, and we had them doing,
Yeah.
like I have my own biases too. I thought that these girls, like, I'm like, maybe they could drag the dummy like two at a time. Like, no,
Sure,
these girls
sure.
are like doing it all themselves, they're teaching me something, but I think that, a lot of departments, and I'm out here in California, we're trying to get women in the fire service, but they're waiting until these girls are in high school or college
Hmm.
sports, and they already have their minds made up, right? So we
Sure.
realize
Yeah.
that we need to go expose girls even younger than 12, to that this is a career option for you, and
Hmm.
at least to see a woman, that this is a job that you could do, that gets girls interested before they decide where they're going to college or what they're going to do. And I think we were grabbing girls maybe too late to have them, to
Sure.
switch, to get into the fire service. There still are empowerment camps throughout Southern California right now. DEI has kind of like taken a hit. Like it was like a lot of departments wanted to
Mm.
to do more of that, and even in the department I worked for, I did it for the 2 years that I was the chief, and
Hmm.
then once I was gone, they don't do it anymore.
Mm.
So it's a major bummer, but I do believe in the program, and like you, like anything that involves young people, I love pathway programs where you could start as a camp kid and you
Yeah.
could go all the way up through the ranks to fire chief, that puts you through medic school, the whole thing, that there's a pathway for you and you can go as high as you want.
I it's because it all, again, if we can capture minds early, that is the best time, like you said, to format people. So with the program, I mean, were they, was it, hammers and nails and stuff like that, but like did we teach, like basic firefighting stuff, or was it kind of just really to sort of like a quick hot wash of the fire service and stuff, associated with it?
We tried to cram as many things in those 2 days as we could, like in everything that we
Okay.
do.
Yep.
We did some EMS, but we even got them little limbing chainsaws. These girls were cutting holes. They
That's
were
awesome.
pulling hose. They were,
Yeah.
they were climb the aerial ladder. They did
That's so
like
cool.
dragging dummies. They did, oh, we have the forcible entry door prop. I mean, we
That's
had
so
them
great.
cutting stuff with sawzall, like, oh, and it's so cute is that they would cut with the sawzall, and they would take a little piece of metal as their little memento, that's what they did.
I mean, but it made their absolute lives. And
Yeah.
that's what I remember. There, some of my, in fact, all of my foundational blocks in the fire service did start with that. It started when I was, gosh, 14, 15 years old, and I got bit by the bug. My fire service giant, Matt, who was guest number one on this, and in it, I tell the story a lot, but had he said no to being guest number one on the podcast, I may not have a podcast, because it was very hinged upon him being like, yeah, let's do it. Because if not, he got like the first right of refusal, but I was very hell bent on it had to be him, because if he wasn't going to start off the show, then I don't know what I would do. And he's since retired from the fire service, but yeah, he founded our Fire Explorers post, and it's funny because I will go toe to toe with people, because they're like, well, how many years of service? And I'm like, oh, I'll give the number, and they're like, well, how old are you? And then they do the math back to 18, and like, wait a minute, where are these extra years? Unbeknownst to me, we did a lot more on scene stuff than most explorers are probably legally allowed to do. So I also looked at it from a viewpoint of, a lot of people are like, well, you started 18 serving your community. I'm like, no, actually 14 years old. Every Tuesday night, we'd be at the firehouse. We would train, we would respond. Really, the only thing that we couldn't do as kids was, actual structure fire attacks inside. But you bet your ass we were outside spraying water in windows, or like we were really, I mean, and again, looking back at it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that probably shouldn't have been doing a lot. I mean, the concept was we would go after, it was well under control. Smoke was pretty much non-existent type thing, but we were knuckles deep into it. And I mean, in fact, he was telling a story about one of the car accidents that we were working. And he's like, did you know that he goes, the entire force that was on the ground were all the explorers. Like, we actually extricated a patient from a car and didn't even realize that we were the only responders for our community for that call. And I'm like, oh, damn, dude, that's pretty cool. But, of course, again, administratively, I peel the layer of the onion back and I'm like, dude, that could have gone so incredibly bad. We could have had injuries and lawsuits and all of this.
I love it.
And Matt was the one who really got me into the leadership. I knew from day one that I wanted to be a leader, and it all starts with mentorship. To that, so I mean, how would you think that mentorship in the fire service should truly be developed for future leaders rather than just offer, so a formal mentorship program? So I really love formal mentorship programs. I think we do a good job at, okay, JP wants to be a firefighter, Deena wants to join the fire service. Okay, go get your this class, you're good. Then we teach you throughout your career. Okay, we're going to enrich upon what your foundational blocks. But when it comes time to promote, unless it's different out in your neck of the woods, there is shit for offerings out there as far as for how to be the lieutenant, how to be the captain, because we go from lieutenant, captain, and up, and then how to be a deputy. I'm still learning day to day what a deputy fire chief needs to do, because there's no handbook that I could really read and be like, okay, so this is how in my agency I need to be a deputy fire chief. Can I read good leadership books? There's a plethora of them out there, but there's really not a lot for each specific. How can departments, I guess, start formatting a really good internal officership mentor program?
So we had like a workforce development or like a succession planning, but not,
Yep.
which was at least somewhere to start, right? And even the California State Fire Training has like what classes to take and what to do. But really, like, I feel like that there needs to be a more formal mentorship. I mean, or especially, I think that the most important position on the fire department, I think, is that frontline supervisor. I think is that,
yes, I
because
agree.
that is, where the rubber meets the road, and that's where those decisions are being made every day. And when I was the chief, I tried to pour into the company officers as much as I could, as far as their personal development, leadership development, and like just, those things that we all struggle with, like from buddy to boss, like acknowledge you want to be the cool person, the cool guy, the cool captain, but
right.
You are an employee for the city. Like, I think that's the hardest transition, and like I mentioned with battalion chief and fire chief, I really didn't have any mentors. Definitely we need to do a better job of that mentorship, having a mentorship program in the fire service.
I think you hit it with succession planning, and a lot of departments really, I think, try at that. But again, we can even go back a little bit farther to gatekeeping. I think a lot of times people see, man, if I teach Deena what I'm doing, am I really necessary anymore? Or if she knows everything as far as how we operate, man, it's the harboring, the gatekeeping.
Yeah.
See, I look at it from a viewpoint of, the more that I teach, say, our captains or lieutenants, the more of my job they can do, which means the easier my job will be. So it makes more sense to me to be like, hey, if a lieutenant can, let's just say there's something, deputy chief related as far as, discipline or whatever the case is. If the lieutenant can handle it, leave me out of it, dude. I don't, because we have appeal processes in place. So the more that you can handle everything, whether it be, when it comes to write-ups, we try to leave it to myself and the other deputy, as, the write-ups come from our level, and everything else should be, the lieutenants are like, hey man, when you're doing XYZ, make sure you're doing ABC, the counseling, and then the captain gets into the hey, I know the lieutenant just talked to you about this 6 weeks ago, but you didn't do it again, so now we're going to talk about it now. It's more formal, and we're going to do a good a formal verbal where there's the documented it happened, and then again it bounces up to the other deputy, myself, and we're like, hey, Cap talked to you, Lou talked to you, clearly something is not happening, so now we're at the write-up level. And then we have assistants above us actually in our agency. So then it boils down to the assistants get to do the deputies talk to you and clearly it's not working. So take some time off and think about what you go over there in the corner, stand and think about what you did, and then come back at it. And then when it gets to the chief, now you're like, hey man, these guys followed the whole process. And now if it gets to the chief's desk, now there's a problem. One of the things that I'm seeing in the fire service a lot, and I'm not sure if you ran into it a lot in your area, but it seems like a lot of promotions happen more on, we need to ensure a process, I should say, rewards leadership ability and integrity, and not just test taking capabilities. If you're able to pass the cognitive tests, it's good that you're able to do that. But man, we live in this is an industry, I should say, not that we live in. This is an industry that we have where people have to be cognitively able and not just physically able, I should say. So is that something that you ran into where, people were sort of moved around or promoted up or whatever the case is, more based on their test taking abilities and, rather than their physical and, knowledge abilities?
It's really the department I worked for. We didn't have a lot of calls.
Okay,
and
sure.
So I think that for me, that's why I relied so much on all the classes and all the training, because you're going to be, you still have to make those decisions, but it's not based on calls that you've been on. Right. So I think that I like to say that the training part, the school part is important, not just because I'm like a book smart person and not a street smart person.
Yeah.
And I think at a smaller department or when you're not busy, the personalities come out more. There's more time to be just gossiping and talking. If there's idle time, I feel like we had too much idle time so a lot of the positioning would be as we're moving personnel around, like you're saying, is this captain is going to be on the truck with this person or that. There would be strength of character and personalities, and we did our best to put the right people together. Before I was in a leadership position, I think that sometimes they put all the buddies together in one rig, and there's pros and cons to that. I know you trust one another or whatever,
sure.
But as a high functioning team and department, I think that there needs to be more work going into that on who you put together, or the overall, rise the boats of, the rising tide, all the boats lift, is that maybe if we trained up everybody on the department a little bit better, it wouldn't matter who's with who, or, or you couldn't get away with stuff,
Yeah. No, there's a lot to be said. At least the fire service in most places, we're starting to really recognize that the good old boys clubs are a failing breed. And if we don't have the ability to realize that now, then it's either get on the bus and recognize that it's a failing business practice, or just get run over by the bus because your buddies are going to do that to you. That's just how it works sometimes. This is great. I have probably a handful of more questions, but I think there's an obvious message to the fire service that you've done a lot of good in the fire service. I love the fact that you had a lot of perseverance to really push through. There's no doubt that there were things that that are probably not good for public consumption, stories and stuff that you obviously had to, I know there's probably countless stories. Throughout all of the struggles you had working your way from the first day in the door to walking out as the chief, was there ever a moment in time where you really kind of just thought that the fight really wasn't worth it? And how did you handle that if that's the case?
That's a good question. I sometimes I tell a story about, so when I promoted to captain, I only had 4 years on the job.
Okay.
And so I took the test. There were 2 captain spots open. I really just took the test just to see what was on it, and just,
Sure.
no pressure. And but I had, and I came out number 1. And so a couple weeks later, I am sitting in the front seat, and now I'm supervising, guys with, 20 years on the job, and then plus being a woman. And those first couple of years as a company officer, we worked 48-hour shifts. I would pretty much cry every drive home. I mean, it was so rough. And, I remember one of, they were just giving me the hardest time possible, and I remember I had a good engineer who was dialed, and he was fun to be around. And one of the firefighters told me, like, hey, there's too much heat on Johnny for being your engineer. He's about to give up, and I went to him and I said, Johnny, please just stay with me for 6 more months until I got off probation as a captain, and then you can transfer or you can do whatever. But he was really feeling the heat from just being my engineer, right? Like, so everybody was trying to make it hard on me. And so, then I was captain for a long time, and I got comfortable in the position. And then when I decided to take the battalion chief test, my chief asked me, like, what's your worst fear? And I said that the same thing's going to happen again, that they're really going to undermine me and be insubordinate and do all these things. And you know what? It did happen again. And it was even like one of the other battalion chiefs that was my peer, unbeknownst to me at the time, went around and told everyone to not talk to me. Like, to not even, one of the guys was having a conversation with me in the kitchen, and he went to him and said, what are you doing? Why are you talking to her? And then when I was a BC, one of the captains was really undermining and calling me Deena on the radio instead of Battalion 31, and being insubordinate and just doing all this stuff. So I went for discipline with him, because I needed, when someone's insubordinate to you, you can't just let it go, so exactly, I had to, what am I going to do? So I had to do it. And then the union president came to me and said, we don't, I think he was going to get a couple of days off. And the union president said, if you don't drop the discipline, just give him a slap on the wrist, or we're going to bring up every inappropriate thing you've ever said or done. That was a threat from, and so it's like, so I've got, everybody's against me, basically, and, I try not to go into this victim mode, because I wasn't a victim consciousness. After I retired, I licked my wounds for a little bit, but now I'm ready to fight again,
Amen. Fucking right. We're gonna fight together. God damn right we are.
Kind of in a roundabout way to get to your point is when the fire chief position came to me, I really thought, long and hard about it. Like, because I'm telling you, my experiences with promoting to captain in BC, it was like, do I really want to go through this again? Mm-hmm. But the reason was that I wanted to show other girls and women that a woman could be in this position. And quite honestly, and men too, so now the people that have seen me in the role of fire chief, they have that in their mind, that they've seen, that's, you don't just close your eyes and picture, a guy salt and pepper with a big mustache,
Sure.
Looks like.
Exactly.
You can actually see me too. But, you know, I have no regrets. And I still want women to enter, and I want women to take the promotional exams,
Mm,
and and so it's not a question about like would I do it over again. Like I said, that I think that in the beginning when I was that delusional and I thought that I could change the world, you know, like I
sure.
wouldn't. I don't want to squash that person, you know, that I was, but I want to just I call it fortify other women, so that when
Mm,
those things happen that were happening to me, that they can either stop it or it doesn't really affect you
hmm.
so, you know, harshly, you know, when you
Well
retire.
said. Yeah. And it's a really good, so I guess specifically for the dude, it really frustrates me how much we want to say that we have a brotherhood, and you listen to your story and how absolute douchebaggy people can be. They really really can be. Um, for an industry that claims that we really are, you know, what is it, you know, the brotherhood, all for one, one for all. We really do a good job at exiling people. So for those listening, specifically the men, if we're being very honest, what do they need to understand about the subtle barriers that women face in the fire service?
Well, subtle barriers. I don't think that they're like it's civil service job, right? So that's what
Mm,
I love is that, you know, like even when I took the test and I came out number one for captain, I came out number one for battalion chief, you know, and then they question the test. The test was fair, you know, and I've heard from
sure.
other women saying like that then they start questioning the test. So there's not a lot that if you think that it's a good exam, then, you know, then I earn that
Yeah,
spot, right? Just like a man would. But
sure.
what I think what affected me over the years is like the subtle like messages that you don't belong here, like the
Hmm.
subtle dismissals, the undermining, that just it's constant. It has like an accumulative effect on a
Mm,
person, you know. And
yeah,
so and I know that it's not just women. I know that, and you probably know too, that like if you're the person that's ostracized, that's picked on, like that you're just coming from a defensive posture and you're not going to get the best out of that person, you know.
right.
It's really cruel. um but you know, like just the diversity of people in the job is what makes us great. Like, you're not going to put the 400-pound guy up in the attic, you know, right? And you're
Sure,
not going
right.
to, you know, like and it's not just physical size, but, you know, that we have other things to offer, you know, our intelligence, our compassion, um, you know, I want to tell the guys out there that we're not letting off the gas. I mean, my manifesto is that I'm not.
Yes.
It might not happen in my lifetime, but I'm not stopping until there's 51% female in the fire service instead of less than 5%. You know, so let's go. Let's fucking go.
I fucking love it, Chief. This is great. Um, so I want to hit a TikTok thing really quick because it was when Aiden sent me, um, very passionate follower of the platform, reached out, background story for those that are listening, and I know he's listening eventually once this does release, and I'm very very thankful that he is. Was more than enthusiastic to send. He's like, I have a guest request, and uh, he pulled through. So of course, obviously, he's like, hey, check out our TikTok page, and the first video that popped up was you talking about the moral injury as related to females in the fire service. For those that have not seen it, go back and give it a look. But Chief, if you want to run through kind of what the premise was, what was your driving? And sometimes for me with my videos, the answer is like, I don't know, dude, it felt really good. So I just recorded and started yapping. But it really hit with me because um, it's I'll let you kind of walk through it, and then we can kind of debrief after. But hopefully it rings a bell with you, because sometimes I brought it, feels like, oh my God, I made that 45 years ago, so I barely remember. But it was a discussion about moral injury and stuff like that. So I'll let you run with it, and then we can kind of talk about, on the backside.
So I almost didn't post that video. It seemed too depressing to me, but I learned about what moral injury is from, I had a culturally competent therapist who, specifically works with first responders, and she brought that to me, and I thought that there were other women out there, or men, that would like what I'm telling you about, knowing the language, understanding what's happening to you. And it obviously, it did make sense to a lot of people. It touched a lot of people that I got feedback from first responders. But I think that the moral injury hit me so hard, and I know you relate to this too, is because I cared so much, and I believed so much in everything that we were taught about integrity and work ethic and teamwork, and leave it better than you found it, and we're all for one, and the whole thing. And then just to find out, it's kind of like being betrayed by someone you loved so much. It's like a betrayal and a grief and an understanding, and like it is that death by 1,000 cuts as well is. And so to just put a name to it and an understanding, and then like I said, with community, knowing that others have gone through it too makes you not feel so alone, and like I said, that I kind of went through a victim kind of, I played through everything. After I retired, I played through everything like about 300 times, about everything that ever happened to me, about how I could have prevented or whatever. But then, like, when I finally took ownership of my whole career, and when I stopped trying to make myself like the good guy, and see that I made a lot of mistakes too, and there are times that I had a chip on my shoulder, or I didn't do the best thing, but it was kind of that moral injury post was kind of a reconciling with what had happened throughout my career, and and it's not. It's how you overcome it, right? And look what I'm doing now. I'm using it for good. Yeah.
Amen.
So
you're damn right you are. I'm proud of how you're working out, and obviously it's at 1,000+ likes and 13,000 views, so it's clearly making its ways around. I have a couple more questions. I'll get you on your way so you can do probably funner things than talking to some Frenchman from New England.
No, you're awesome.
What personal habits for you made the biggest difference in your rise through the ranks?
Biggest habits? That's a good question. So, like I mentioned before, I'm like one of those lifelong learners, and I just was constantly taking classes to improve my craft, but also like reading books for personal development. And I would think like walking the walk, and not just talking the talk, and being able to put my money where my mouth is.
Yep.
And I think those things, and just, I just love the job, just like you, like I never got tired of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What, of all the positions, what was your most favorite one that you had throughout your career?
So I have, different I'm going to give you two answers.
Yeah, of course.
So we were one of the early adopters of a team that's called Rapid Extraction Module Support. It's like basically the firefighters that go out to the wildland firefighters in are there to rescue firefighters that are down. Like we have the whole rope rescue system. It's like an offshoot from the urban search and rescue, right? And I love the forest. I love the wildland, and I was so grateful that we had that opportunity to go out. That was one of the things that I love to do. But I would say being a truck captain was probably the best spot.
It's oddly enough, captain was my so far, and I'm very proud and happy of where I am as a deputy. But captain, I loved the most. Lieutenant was really good. I'm the most proud of lieutenant. In fact, I just the truck that my first truck, it just went out of service, so I peeled the old badge off the back of it because I'm like that was my girl. Like she was my first truck as a lieutenant. I loved being a lieutenant. It was really fun to have the responsibility of the 5 to 7 guys, so on and so forth. But captain was really cool because I was able to then take people who wanted to be bosses for people and make them the best version of a leader. And not to mention disciplinary wise, it was really cool because like, hey, that firefighter just fucked up. Go tell him not to do it anymore. And I didn't have to do anything more with it because it usually stopped at that. But it was oddly enough, the individual who was my mentor when I joined this department, he's like, captain is the best position. He moved up to deputy chief. And oddly enough, I actually, when he retired, I took his call sign and everything. So it was just, it's kind of like euphoric. But he's like, captain's the best because you are the funnel between the administration and the boots on the ground. And even granted, we are a combination department. So one of the reasons I really like where I'm at now is during the daytime, myself and the fire chief are the only 2 full-time staffers. So guess who gets to still go and play and fight fires? This guy, right? So while she's handling all the bureaucratic nonsense, and and don't get me wrong, being an IC can be fun too, but man, there is a lot to be said about still being able to go break windows and crawl through smoke charged hallways and stuff like that. Deena, I love, thank you so much for your time today. I want to end on one question that I do give everybody at the end of all of the shows. And, we've hit a lot on the topic. So you covered a lot. So you might have to dig a little bit for a good answer. But for the new up and coming fire officer or somebody starting their journey down the path as, they want to be a fire officer, what is your pure, raw, and unadulterated piece of advice for them?
For the men and women that want to be officers?
Yes. Yeah. They're firefighters now, but they're interested and want to become a leader.
That's a great question. I would say be strong in doing the right thing.
Oh, that's got to be one of the best ones I've had, if we're being 100% on. I got to actually go back through all the episodes and be like, and write them down and make it like the Passionate Leader, guest memoirs or something like that. Because there have been a few that have been similar, but that was chef's kiss. I am so thankful for your time today. Is there anything else that you wanted, kind of talk about? Anything we didn't hit or anything like that before we wrap it up?
No, I just think that you are super cool. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
I love your contribution to the fire service. I think it's beautiful that what you're doing, like your legacy is chef's kiss right there. But
I appreciate it. I am honestly just paying back what I was given from my mentor. So thank you again for your time. To all those, to the guests, to our listeners. Actually, before I even sign us off, if somebody wants to follow you across social media and stuff like that, if you're comfortable with sharing it, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me at The Feminist Fire Chief on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. And there's a link to my website, which is called Support Her Strength. And you can book, I do one-on-one coaching, group coaching, mentoring, and and I answer all my messages.
I freaking am so in love with this. All right, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Deena, thank you so much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks for spending time with us today on the Passionate Leader podcast. If something today hit home, don't sit on it, share it. If something in this episode did not hit home, ladies and gentlemen, please check your pulse, because there was a lot that we unpacked. One, first and foremost, I'm going to tell you, dudes, stop being assholes. Be nice. Understand that everybody deserves a seat at the table in the fire service. Treat everybody fairly. It doesn't matter their gender. Don't sit on this episode. Share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Follow the Passionate Leader across all platforms, and pull up a chair every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on TikTok, where leadership meets the kitchen table and real talk drives real change. If you want deeper conversations and first access to exclusive offers, join us on Patreon and step into the inner circle. As always, be the kind of leader that somebody else is praying for, the leader you needed when you first joined. And before I get to our Passionate Leader Creed, which has 3 very important things to it, there are 3 things that Deena talked about in the very beginning of this show. And that was her rules as an officer. That's be professional, be ready, and take care of each other. And in the Passionate Leader platform, guys, no matter what comes your way, remember this: lead with passion, serve with humility, and leave no room for bottom feeders. Until we see each other again, guys, stay safe.